Jeff Sample is not with your usual Dorkcast here this week, so I'm going to play MC. I'm going to be Jeff Light, I think, is probably not. It's hard to live up to Jeff's skill set there as a host. But today we're talking, will the Power BI Ice Age kill the Excelasaurus? And quite a nerdy title there, but I think it's going to spark some pretty interesting conversation. And once we get through introducing ourselves and talking about what we're sipping on here, we'll get right into it. So, Travis, you're the lead off.
All right. I'm Travis Voss, as usual here. I'm drinking, it's called the Pretzel City Amber from Generations Brewing here in Freeport, Illinois. Anyone not familiar with the ESPN Weirdest Mascot contest of several years ago, Freeport, Illinois, I believe, won that because we are the only, they're the only high school I know of that's named after food. So we're Pretzel City, USA, and this is the Pretzel City Amber.
I just want to interrupt. There is a high school in Indiana, in Frankfort. I think they're the Frankfurt hot dogs. So I don't know if you can claim the only food. One. Yeah.
Put them together, get a pretzel bun and a hot dog, and we'll all get on board.
Yeah, man. Now we need to wrap it up. I'm getting hungry. So
yeah, now I'm hungry.
Jonathan, man, what's up? What do you got?
I am Jonathan Marsh with Steel Consulting, and I got Kevin Suhu sent me a Yamasaki 12, and this day sucked.
What did you do for him?
Drinking a Yamasaki 12. Dude, for Yamasaki, what did I do for him? Come on.
Man, so Kevin, is that like expected now? Is that the
man, he introduced me to Japanese whiskeys, man. If you haven't tried them, they're sweet. They're all pretty good whiskeys, man.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, they have it's a diverse drinking culture for sure. Mm-hmm. When I was overseas with the Army in a previous life, a lot of Japanese soldiers we used to kampai with, so all right, we'll move down. I guess I'll go ahead and get mine out of the way. I'm sipping on an old fashioned that I made out of a double oaked Woodford Reserve here. I guess I'm not as nerdy about the process, but they like pre-season the oak barrels, I guess, that they use for the double oak. So it's a little smokier. It's pretty good.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've got two guests on today, and I'll let them kind of talk about who they are and show us what they're drinking. So we'll start with Brett Young.
Oh, am I muted?
No, you're good.
Oh, I like it. Brett Young, I'm with M2X. We are a digital fabrication studio. We do pre-construction things, I think is the best way to call it. We are automating shop drawings and automating model geometry and doing a bunch of fun work. So, and then I'm drinking, I thought we had to have beer, and I'm kind of trying to watch my weight a little bit. And so I didn't have the beer. Instead, I went with what I call a Midwestern Russian, which is, it's a white Russian mixed with an A&W root beer float. So it's
interesting.
It's root beer, ice cream.
Oh wow!
A vodka and Kahlua on top of each other. And
jeez,
hey,
you're not going to make it to the end of the show, right?
Sounds delicious.
Other people have an old fashioned, and Jonathan's got a whole bottle of Suntory. Come on,
and you get the flat
straight from the bottle, though.
Yeah, he didn't even pour it in the glass there. Well, Joseph Whitney, top that one. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I can top that one. So I'm Joseph, Joey Whitney. Call me anything. It's fine. I'm with TopCon. I'm the Eastern U.S. manager for Autodesk software. That's my day job. Focus on BIM workflows, all that fun stuff. My hobby is I host a podcast as well called Brewing with BIM, and we chat about construction technology and drink alcohol. On that, though, what I'm drinking is, so I'm jumping on your bandwagon with the old fashioned, although I did get nerdy with this one. I'm drinking homemade black raspberry old fashioned. It's using a Rochester, New York bourbon whiskey I got when I was there a few weeks ago. And I candied some lemons, and it's got black raspberry and crushed cherries, a lot of fun stuff in there. But not quite as delicious as probably the Kahlua concoction
Yeah, no kidding.
and Tori, but it'll do.
It sounds pretty good.
Travis, Jonathan, we're gonna have to step our game up.
Yeah,
I don't know
we're slacking a little bit.
Yeah, man. We need to do like Ultra Mix.
Yeah.
Great. Are we done now? Or can we go?
Right, now we should start drinking.
Yeah, I need to start drinking.
All right, guys. All right, so as far as Microsoft Excel goes, I think it's safe to say that if you've used a computer for more than 8 hours in your life, you probably know what Microsoft Excel is. So in regards to the world of construction, it finds its way into just about every process. With BIM teams, with the PMs and estimating, guys in the field, warehousing, project coordinators. Fab shop, I don't think there's any part of the process that doesn't incorporate Microsoft Excel in some way. I think the overall trend is people are trying to find ways to probably shrink that usage and be a little more collaborative, using some of the intuitive data that these models produce to kind of show information in more real time and fancier charts and better ease of use. But there's also people who probably could argue for the existence of Excel. So that's why we're here, and we're going to go down that road. And Travis, I thought I'd kind of start with you. The contracting world, one I'm familiar with. Kind of go through what are your guys' biggest uses of Excel, and what are some of the ways you guys have fought to get rid of it in some areas. So.
Yeah. I would echo your thoughts on exactly where it's used, everything from pre-construction where our, bid sheets and stuff are put together, the softwares, the takeoff software, we dump all that raw data into Excel, and there's a lot of manipulation and stuff that goes on there. And then all the way through to the project management team, we have an ERP system, we have some PM tools and stuff like that, but a lot of those folks still like to kind of keep their data off to the side, do some manipulation, keep their numbers or whatever they're doing there, kind of tucked away until everything is actually finalized, or they can actually, one of the biggest knocks usually against ERP systems is they're very clunky, they're very hard to use, they're not very, very robust as far as workload flows go. So they like to keep that stuff kind of tucked away until it becomes real numbers, and then that's the only time that they will commit some of that stuff in. And like you're saying, the VDC team, pipe and duct matrices and stuff like that are all shared within Excel spreadsheets, bills of material, everything out of the shop and everything. So how are we trying to get rid of that? We are trying to leverage more connected systems so the data just flows naturally. We're trying to encourage use of more purpose-built softwares for whatever the task is at hand, so that they can use a tool that's flexible and friendly, but the data doesn't kind of get, you don't create a data silo of one. Essentially, a lot of these project teams have, like I said, all that data just exists on the project manager's laptop or whatever, and doesn't really kind of get exposed to the rest of the company until they feel it's ready. And it's not a knock against them. That's just it's just the easier tool for them to use. And then, like I said, connected systems. We're trying to leverage some of the business intelligence tools, so that we can connect up more data sources and do some visualizations and some data manipulation and relationship building in there to show them the true power that underlies the data, other than just having the numbers in the cells and stuff like that.
Right. So I think some of the points that I found that I can touch on with what you said too is, the software we have, we're leveraging data from the model, from, the models we build with parts in it. But I think the reason that information has to get dumped into Excel is because that exportation of the data, that isn't robust enough to carry through the whole process. So there's always some little manipulation that has to happen,
right.
Next step down the line. Do you ever think we would get to a point where it would be robust enough to to where they wouldn't have to do that?
I think we have to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We definitely have to get to the point.
Excel is the ultimate point solution. It is one user on a spreadsheet doing whatever the hell they want. I mean, you can do anything you want with it, and therein lies the rub, right? The things that we all kind of want to move to, and which Meg Inc. is moving to, are platforms and collaborative, systems where you have control and you have the ability to manage it more coherently. But if Excel is like this ball of point stuff, right? ERPs are very, very targeted, and you're going to need a bunch of them to, you're going to have a whole ton of them, right? To replicate the things you can do on Excel, presuming you want to do them kind of at a collaborative enterprise kind of level.
Well, I think it's not only collaborative. One of the things that is a constant problem is keeping standardization, because it is a point solution. And even if you have, you have that specialized spreadsheet with all of the macros and formulas and stuff like that, it ceases being a standard once somebody takes their own copy of that and starts to bastardize it, or worse, they go into the main one and they break a formula or break a macro, and it screws everybody else moving forward. So to your point, Brett, it's you want the collaborative environment, but you want those controls, right? You don't want the Wild West.
So I had a question today, actually, came up. When you're ordering duct, what is the typical increment of duct you can order in? Half inch, full inch, quarter inch?
That's a question.
I don't know. Coil line.
Huh? Right?
Yeah, your own coil line. I'll order by the pound.
Well, but I mean, if you're going, hey, I want a 28 by 14 duct, right? Can you really I know technically if you have it with a coil line or laser cutter, you can
no, there's SMACNA standards
for a full half inch or quarter inch, or
what's SMACNA break down to? More of a pipe guy. I think it's half inch.
Okay. So I was actually doing it in metric now. Okay. So when you're in metric, you're at a whole nother increment, right? And you can go much smaller. So is 1 millimeter increment reasonable, or is 5 millimeter increment, or is 5 centimeters reasonable, right? These are all things you can order duct on, right? For our discussion here, if you're ordering duct or you're doing anything involving duct sizing, you should be able to caption down as an enterprise what size of duct you have, right?
Yeah.
And so think about all the numbers we have running around and how to bound them up and how to go, hey, you can only do this range of numbers for what you're trying to do.
You know what? I think that when it comes to a lot of those things where we're trying to extend a capability within a company, I like Excel for what it allows us to experiment with. Like for getting a quick MVP to 1 or 2 people, and it kind of sets a scope, right? Like if you go around, I go to a lot of companies kind of fresh and I want to know what they're doing. If I look at all the Excel sheets that the pipe PMs use, I can kind of get a guess at what they're expecting to see and how they're expecting to interact with models and with each other. So, I'm kind of I like the idea of killing Excel. I got to do a lot of that because when I was doing our first, exploration of getting stuff into the field, we did a lot of PDF, and PDF and Excel don't really live in the same world. If you use like Bluebeam Studios, killing your Excel becomes a must because you want to keep everybody in that studio. Studio doesn't like Excel files. So you turn all these Excel files into limited databases with PDFs as their front end. You know what I mean? But I have to say the best and easiest way for me to understand what people are trying to get at is if they'll send me the Excel that they're using. Like if you're planning your manpower and I want to know how you're planning your manpower, just send me your Excel sheet that you use or that your top PM uses, and I can kind of filter out what I think is important from that and maybe look for a real solution. Because you're right, once it goes corporate, that now is just a giant mistake waiting to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Joey, I was gonna, because I think that was part of one of your responses that you sent when we were doing the social media posts, is like the potential for rapid prototyping and stuff like that. Wasn't that something that you had mentioned when it is kind of a pro of keeping it around?
I don't think that was one that I mentioned,
Okay.
but at least I can't remember too much alcohol since then.
Yeah.
But I do want to piggyback off of what you were saying. You were mentioning, both to and fro, to kill Excel because it doesn't really interact with PDF. But we're dependent on Excel files when we're doing quantity takeoff inside of Bluebeam, right? I mean, so there is some overlap where it does make sense to keep it. And yes, I get that we could keep a lot of that stuff, or we could do away with a lot of that stuff if we did all that stuff in Revit to begin with. But that's just not the nature of things as we are today. In order to kill off Excel, wholeheartedly in our industry, would you have to say that everybody would have to jump to Revit? We'd have to, have model-based solutions, and maybe not just Revit, but everything would have to be 3D, and we'd have to have all this information in there. And then you're beholden to the tags and everything that everybody has captured, and then you can't do anything with it. So my whole thing is, I like Excel because it is the wild, wild west. I like to be able to manipulate the data. I like to be able to have it in create different columns and fields that are non-standard. And the reason being is I used to do a lot of stuff with CRMs and ERPs and migrating data, and you end up with these data pools of dead data that you're waiting to clean and do something with. So, writing custom reports with like Crystal, a report writer, you're stuck and locked to the attributes that you have. You can't create data on the fly in those systems. You can create new columns once everything's done, but aggregating and merging data, just a pain in the butt. Excel handles that beautifully. It's just so easy to use, and everybody knows how to use it, for the most part. I've got, I've worked with estimators that can barely work a smartphone, but you give them Excel and they're in a league of their own.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I was kind of thinking, when we talk about killing Excel, I definitely don't think that any one of us are saying that at the macro level we're killing Excel, but you're looking for those micro, like those process improvements where maybe you're eliminating it from one very very small process at a time. Travis said something in his intro about how we use Excel for our bill of materials a lot of times, and in the mechanical world, that's generally what happens when we pull it out of Revit or whatever design software. Usually, it goes into Excel, and then you play your cleanup game before you send it off to purchasing, right? Just so they don't order all the wrong stuff. But, I know I've spoken with Travis about this, and we're working on connecting that content data to vendor ERP systems using like a unique identifier for each part. I mean, if you can accomplish that and you're connected and you can do your request for quotes and you're purchasing right from that Power BI dashboard or wherever you're handling that bundle of information. I mean, you've killed Excel there, right? So like at a micro level, I think that we're finding ways to do it, but as far as getting rid of it completely, yeah.
Well, then I can't argue against that, right? I'm a big proponent for collaborative databases. I do like the newer systems with Excel because you can collaborate on a linked file essentially within your company, and that helps a little bit. You've got smart sheets where they're Excel-like, but they're in the cloud. Like there's a lot of replica type programs that allow us to collaborate and have that same functionality. But as far as the automation of Power BI and all that stuff, I'm 100% on board. It's just that in order to kill, the large majority of Excel, you do have to kill those micro tasks because that's where everybody's using Excel. That's where the comfort level lies.
We could come up with a score for it. How many Excel hours per corporation do you have versus how many, ERP hours, or how many like managed hours you have in a thing? It's like, when I go to buy things on Amazon, I don't have to have an Excel sheet to go and order them. Why do I have to order with an Excel sheet if I'm trying to order duct?
Sure. But it would be nice to have an Excel spreadsheet to order from Amazon. I'd love to be able to.
Not if you're Amazon.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Well, same thing, but it's not about empowering the vendor. It's about empowering the purchaser.
Oh, no, but the vendor can then offer dirt cheap pricing, can't it?
Right. You're going to see that increase somewhere. Right?
I can anybody, Amazon has got to have a fax number to fax them an order, right?
Let's go for it.
They got. I bet. Do you think we can find one?
I'm sure it exists somewhere.
You have to fill it out and you fax it to them, right?
They got one guy in an office somewhere with them, just
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because Jeff Bezos' mother, who's 88 years old, still
That's definitely one of the areas where I thought, Brett, you'd kind of tee off, because you've done a lot with machine learning and a lot with sort of building those patterns. And I think that's the biggest problem we have is with bill of materials. That little cleanup that you're doing, Trent, is because our databases aren't perfect that we're pulling these names out of, and because there's 6 different products that could fulfill our desire. We have 6 things and we could alias them. But if we could teach a program to look at our lists and just go, well, there's 6 different things. Here's the bottom 3. They're the best 3 price-wise. Pick from these 3 because I already know what 6 things this could be. And I feel like that's an area where you're never going to get there with Excel. We could be really good programmers. We're not going to get to the point where we can use Excel to basically filter sets. I mean, probably there's some nerd out there listening is like, oh, I can do that. But there's just
hold my worksheet.
I've got a pivot table that'll handle this.
900 Excel files that do that.
VLOOKUP.
There you go.
But you know what I'm saying is that
hold my Midwestern Russian.
Yeah. But what do you think, Brad? I mean, do you think that's an area where, because that really is a problem, bill of materials, going to purchasing, going to marketing. Yeah. We're trying to pick, we're trying to take one item and split it.
I've got a bunch of opinions about all that I think are fairly well, I don't know. I thought real hard about it. If there are 5 different parts that can fulfill a thing, right?
Yeah.
You're not talking about 5 combinations, because, if you have a part that connects to a part and those 2 can, you can have a different combination in addition to the one that you're lined up with directly, right? Yeah. You have now done a factorial math problem where now you have probably about 800 different options, where originally you had, a handful. So when you look at an entire corporation, how you're trying to manage all that, you're kind of blown out the window. The reality is that, so my kind of my vision of the world is, I have some friends, Elaine Waha and Sumit Oberoi out of Australia and out of UK. They wrote this beautiful paper about industrialized construction. Okay. And they wrote about how we to move forward as an industry, we need to be more industrial about how we go about and do things, right? And one of the ways we can do that is by having subcontractors, like mechanical contractors, become more like a manufacturer. So they are first and foremost a manufacturer, and by the way, they have field capabilities, right? So they're a manufacturer first. They have the ability to do things and ability to do things in the field, because a majority of the work in the prefab world happens before you get to the field. Right? So we should reemphasize, everybody should basically be a manufacturer, right? Now, once we move that way, Excel should absolutely go away, because as a manufacturer, you have to standardize your input into how you go and build things, right? You have to build them really, really quick. You have to do it at scale, and you have to do it really, really well. And if you have things being typed into a spreadsheet, you just can't keep up with where you're trying to go. And so I think the alignment is, 1, subcontractors become more like manufacturers. And if you're going to go do that, you have to build a system to be able to manage all that incoming and outgoing data. Is that enough? I mean, I can keep going if you want.
I think that kind of captures it. I guess really what I was hoping for, in some of talking to you guys about this, is what are the programs now like you mentioned Sparksheet, Joseph. What are the programs that you see that are replacing Excel like on a regular basis? Like they're just kicking it out. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think necessarily that it's kicking it out. What I see is it's a replacement because of the functionality and the cost ultimately, but it's still a replication of the existing functionality.
Yeah,
it's not new functionality.
It's like taking a paper RFI and turning it into an electronic RFI.
Come on, that's
Still got an
progress,
RFI.
right? Paper to PDF is progress. Come on, just
Yeah,
that.
well,
You
but
need that to
Excel
feel like
is
we're
already
doing something.
Excel is already digital, right? It's already,
Yeah.
and you can collaborate in it. It's not as easy.
So
But
this digital
Smartsheets-
transformation that we're trying to do, we're done, right? We're
Yeah,
using
that's it,
Excel,
right?
We're
What's
using
it-
PD, we're using digital paper, we're done.
You use CAD, right? No, it's good. Really? R12? That's still digital. You're good.
So my colleague Derek Westfeld just sent me a text: 206-266-1838. Fax number for Amazon. So
Yeah,
That's
the
a win.
Yeah.
Podcast over. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else to talk about.
End on the high note.
Okay.
Construction
All right, so everybody
dorks have
fax
jumped the
Amazon right
shark.
now.
We jumped the shark, I tell you.
yeah.
Well, yeah, Kevin Lusk put in the chat box, he said, I bet you there's not a mailroom at Amazon. I said, I bet you'd be surprised. Those old ways die hard. Those old ways die real hard.
Well, do you give up a sale? I mean, what percentage of? I mean, there's a math equation there, right? If they're still getting that many orders, then it pays to have someone manage a mailroom, I guess. I mean,
Hey, if they're getting $1 million a year, that's worth one person standing there and, fulfilling
Yeah.
those orders
if
digitally.
he's making more than that, then
Yeah.
I know my next job. So
Right.
Data entry, nice.
yeah, there you go.
Well, but the data entry is a good point. I mean, we all kind of use estimators as kind of our people we point fingers at for the Excel thing, but let's ignore them for a minute. What if you have other staff other than an estimator, other than an executive, like people who have peers and people who are in a coherent group? What if they're using Excel for the same thing? What do we think of that, right? I mean, because like the data entry thing, right, is, if you take a look at, it's like your manpower, Jonathan, your manpower analogy. If you take a look at a thing and you go, hey, here's what they're doing, I think, and here's, at this company, they do it 5 different ways. Here's the best way, and here's the diversity of it. We'll throw out the outlier because Bob is never going to change, and Bob can still do whatever he wants, right? So we got 4, and then you look at it and you go, hey, by the way, if we use something other than an Excel sheet, we turn it into a PDF and we email around, we lower our data entry overhead by 4 times, whatever number of people, by a drastic amount, right? So I think a lot of us, and it's part of the construction dork problem, right? Is that a lot of us have tried to convince estimators to do something differently and failed, right? So we kind of Excel, yeah, let's talk about estimators, right? But
to your point, it's not just the estimators. They back to the PMs, everybody else. They have their template that they've started with, and then they've bastardized throughout the process of their jobs. Yes, to your point, that all that data has to get re-entered somewhere, right? They massage it, do whatever, and it gets re-entered somewhere.
Or you throw it away. Or you throw it away.
Right. Or worse, it sits on a network drive, never to be looked at or analyzed again once the job is over.
Oh, no. If the job goes wrong, you come back and you look at it and go, look, I told you. I told you right here.
Right. I've got this Excel 97 spreadsheet over here that proves I was right.
But that's an excellent point, one that we haven't even touched on. We're so focused on solutions for the future, but those Excel files that they've pigeonholed themselves into don't give you the analytical data. You're not tracking how you actually did or what actually happened properly, because I think it was Brett, like he said, or Travis, it'll go on a network drive somewhere in some file structure for a job, and that's as far as it gets. And then maybe 8 years later, it'll get wiped, when they ran out of space.
Like Brett said, either you're going to get sued or the job's going to go horribly wrong. That's the only time, I don't I don't want to cast asparagus on any of our companies, but I'm guessing that's probably the only time we ever really analyze our data right now, for the most part. To the level that we're talking about, I think we're all trying to get more proactive about it. But
is it because it's too hard to do with those the way it is? If it was easier, do you think they'd do it?
I think that's part of it, and I think that it's always the excuse of we're always too busy being busy. Like, how many PMs have a week or two to sit down between jobs and really kind of go over everything, right? I mean, once your job's wrapped up, your last job's probably not even wrapped up yet before you're assigned your next one.
Sure.
So that's a good pro for Power BI in the sense that if you have standardized data that everybody's collaborating on, and I get that, that's great, but the Power BI part of it, allows you can do look at trends, all that sort of stuff. The reason why it's not efficient today, I don't believe, is I think that we don't know all the right metrics to look at. I don't think that we know all of the right. We're too busy looking at how much waste there is, how much how much labor was there, but we don't really know the metrics or the formulas to kind of do the pattern recognition for efficiencies and risk is just a hard thing to calculate too. Power BI will get us there, but that's that future conversation.
There's a lot that goes into Power BI before Power BI is actually a useful thing, right? I mean, you've got to get all your data in a row. You've got to be on top of things at work. You have data entry points that are into a thing. I mean, Power BI is a dashboarding tool, right? And you got to have, to your point, you got to have it on top of metrics, but you got to have it on top of all kinds of other things that you have going on. Power BI, I think, is the best for being able to being able to create your own dashboard in an ad hoc way.
With multiple data sources.
Yeah. An aggregator dashboard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really
it's the
great way
of Excel type.
But looking at it, I mean, I don't know why. Well, I haven't looked recently, but I'm willing to bet that you can go on GitHub and find a JavaScript or JS, equivalent to Power BI that is free, and that that can replicate a lot of what Power BI does. I don't think that Power BI, it's really kind of a drill down charting tool. And that brings up another question: if Power BI were free, and were absolutely free, how many corporations would use it? What would that look like?
I think Joseph hit it right on the head, though, with that exact question, Brent, would they know the right question to ask it? They'll go to their IT guy and they'll say, I want a Power BI to look at my margins for this or that. But if they're asking the wrong question, then they get a really pretty chart that doesn't tell you anything relevant. I mean, the biggest problems I've had with rolling out anything along the lines of Power BI is I can't tell you what your return on investment for that is. I can tell you that there's a lot of things to line up, like you said, Brett, and there's a lot of things that we have to figure out before we get there, and a lot of questions we have to determine, and that has value in and of itself. But to give you a real ROI on being able to look at things at a glance is tough for me. I mean, I use it, but I usually use it as an add-on to something else. Like when my field issues, when I look at them in what amounts to a Power BI chart. So I kind of slice and dice my field issues so I can see what's going on. But I'm real conscious of the questions I'm asking, Joseph. So I'm like, I want to know if this guy's getting enough issues done in a day, and I can slice and dice to get to that, with a BI. I have to say, Travis hit on something that's so relevant, is that idea that these Excel files are going to end up on a server somewhere. I really wish we had a good program that would go through our XLS files on our servers, strip them, and throw them into a searchable database. You know what I mean? Like,
isn't that Dado? Isn't that Jake and Kevin? I mean,
I think that's what we need. Okay, so we got to get Jake on the show right now to explain to us how Dado can rip through my Excel files and make them searchable. Because if you did that, all of a sudden, those histories that we don't have of estimates are available to us. That's hugely valuable.
But there's a big difference between like going, I need a data lake. I need a lake that I can fish in for my data, and I'm going to be really good at fishing, right? so that if I have an Excel sheet that I know is out there, I can quickly get at row 82, column D, and get, an answer to whatever, right? That is one problem, right? The other problem is we are businesses and we do things repeatedly, and we should have systems that capture how we do things. And you should be on top of a system that will run automatically, and we look for exceptions and things to go and fight, rather than always treadmill, mouse on a wheel type of thing.
I think that's what we were getting at. You guys were getting at when you were talking about the labor charting and stuff like that. The labor tables is you have this process that 6 people are doing different ways in different spreadsheets. That's when it screams to me system. Yeah. If we have the same process that everybody's doing, and it's, again, we're talking about Excel, so a lot of these are done in Excel. If it's something that can be routinely done in Excel, it should be written in. And multiple people are doing it.
Jonathan, to your point, I do have an ROI for Power BI, and it's based on the work of Nicole Carter and Procore and Big D out in Utah. Okay, you're paying for something like Procore, right? Big D is paying for Procore, or whoever's paying for Procore, because she's worked with as a consultant to people.
Gotcha.
Somebody is working for Procore, right, or buying Procore. I want a dashboard that is viewed across the entire company that shows me how many people have actively used Procore in the last week, and I want it broken down by project and by hierarchy and by category. And the ROI is, the first ROI is I'm not wasting money on a platform. Okay. The ROI after that is Procore, or whatever the platform is, pushing the company to be better and more managed and go to a higher level because you're within a management system. So that is the ROI. A 2-stage ROI. First is I'm not wasting money on software. Number 2 is, and the reality is, the thing about Power BI is then it becomes gamification, right? Top users of Procore, in the last week. Oh, hang on, my name can get up behind the reception desk. Hold my RFI pen. But and then the bottom is, people who have not turned on Procore in 3 months. Bob,
That's very much the way I've seen it used. I use it for issue tracking. I use it on a couple different programs that offer it free for their issue tracking. And I really use it the same way you just described, to look at people. But when I say, what is my actual, when I'm writing an ROI, I better have a money at the bottom line, and it better be more money than the other thing on the bottom line. So I always have a tough time doing that. ERP is the same way. Is your ERP that you just spent $50,000 putting in better than putting in a Tiger Stop for 20? Did you do that right? Did you spend the $50,000, or should you just have bought another piece of equipment? Because usually it's I have a bucket of money and it's not going to get any bigger, so buy the best things I can. But I get your point. Knowing that you have that, knowing those things is certainly helps in managing and helps in sort of incentivizing people to do things there. It troubles me sometimes to try to get that down. Joseph, you look like you're going to say something.
Well, maybe we look at it a different way. Instead of trying to kill one or the other, let's figure out what is the repeatable play, right? So in Excel, I run a bunch of macros, all kinds of stuff, scripts. Helps me automate stuff, clean data, basic stuff. So at some point, if I have to run a script, how often I run that script should dictate, should everybody have this script? And then beyond that, how often do I run this script on a global scale? Should this be a system that gets implemented? Should this be built into something that we already do? Because this is a tedious thing that we're all doing. Let's automate it. I did a presentation earlier today on Festival of BIM called about Dynamo. And that was the whole thing. It was well, when do you implement Dynamo? Well, when you're doing repetitive tasks over and over and over again, and everybody else is having to do the same tasks. Well, maybe that's the same call to action for us to jump to Power BI or some other, integrated data management platform or something of that nature to be able to manage this data, whether it's Tableau or whatever, and visualize it. versus just everybody doing things the same old in Excel?
Like what? One measure would be
critical.
like a superintendent, right? Excel doesn't work well on a phone. It's horrible.
No, or
Right?
an iPad.
Or an iPad, right? I do have Google Sheets on my phone, but I don't use it.
It's horrible. Google Sheets on the phone is horrible.
So let's take a look at everything that a superintendent does, right? And you go, hey, if they have to do something, if superintendent has to do something regularly, more than one time, it should not be in Excel. Okay, troubleshooting and figuring things out, figuring out a dimension string or figuring out, a thing or doing a one-time order is great. But if they're doing, a job hazard analysis, if they're doing a timesheet, if they're doing an employee review, if they're doing ordering, internal ordering, if they're doing, you come up with a list to go, here are all the things that they have to do. Oh my gosh, look at how many of them are on Excel. Because what happens is if they can't do, if they have to do it on Excel, they can only do it in their office. And that is not where you want a superintendent or a job foreman. You want them out in the field,
Point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. It's not putting them where they're valuable, right? So,
well, but think about it. We could do a case study, right? Okay, here's a company that has a timesheet. They do timesheets by Excel, right? When do they do their timesheet?
Yep.
In the trailer at the end of the day. I think that guy or girl should be in a truck going home, trying to beat traffic. And they're going to be more accurate if they're doing it in the field, through some type of, interface.
Even just how cumbersome it is costs us minutes, and minutes is money. You know what I mean? If you're trying to do it in the field in Excel, that's a really common one to break off. By the way, Joseph, I think of Dynamo as I think of Excel. Like if you're using your Dynamo script more than 6 times, you should make it a macro or a button. You know what I mean?
Add it to the Revit API.
It's the Excel of Revit,
I think that's a different conversation.
It's a follow-on podcast. I think.
It's a Dorkcast. We're allowed to get really nerdy.
Really.
Yeah. No, I think it's difficult to know where that magic point is. Like how many times do you do something before it's, before you're past that point of diminishing return or how do you, again, we talk about not knowing the metric for a lot of the things we do. I don't know if we know the metric for even that or Brett, maybe you do. I don't know.
No, I don't know what Travis does.
Does anyone?
No. Nobody knows. I like to keep it that way too.
What is that behind you, Travis?
Oh, that's Monty Python's.
The Holy Grail, yeah.
The Holy Grail. We were talking earlier. I like how it makes my head skinny. Yeah. You got to turn over. I got to take a corner off your dork card if you don't know that one.
Well, I had to ask Jonathan about his background. I was like, I recognize the show, but I just can't place it. So thanks for.
I don't know that anybody's seen the show, right?
I love it, but it was short. There wasn't very many.
Yeah, they canceled it.
Yeah.
This is my so today is my anti-corporate day because corporations kind of got to me this morning, and that's why I'm drinking this afternoon. So I went with Better Off Ted, which is probably the most anti-corporate comedy I've ever seen. It's howlingly hilarious.
More than Office Space?
That good of a day, huh?
Well, yeah, no, not more than Office Space.
Okay, all right.
But it's different. You should, if you've never seen it, just look up Viridian Dynamics and watch a commercial. They have the worst commercials you've ever seen.
Oh, it's so great. It's such a great show, man. And by the way, whoever does your website's curating of memes is on point 100%. Those are so relevant. I don't know, maybe it's a generational thing, but they're great.
I think Mr. Travis handles those.
Yeah, I think he deserves most of the applause for that one.
Yeah, I kind of nerd out. I have a little bit of fun of that. If it was kind of we part talked about this in the first podcast, like the whole part of the fun of being part of this group is that we poke fun at ourselves. We enjoy nerdy things, and we really kind of lean into it. So yeah.
2 minutes before going live, we're like,
Right.
Brett, so you're hosting, right? You guys, like, yeah, I've prepared a whole lot of nothing. So
Hey Trent, I'm not sure how to do this, but Derek looks like he raised his hand. I think he might have something to comment on. I think you can just unmute yourself and chime in, Derek, or now he's gone. Oh no, maybe not.
huh.
If not, we'll keep rolling.
Yeah. You'll have to.
I hate this technology thing is really overblown.
These computers are never going to take off. I think Trevor Owen said, "Well, we were talking about the backgrounds." He goes, "What's behind Brett? A Scarface scene?"
I wish I were cool and could quote Scarface, but I can't.
Say hello to my little friend.
Right, that's all you got.
Oh, that's what that means.
I've been using that one wrong forever.
I've been using that one wrong. Way too much.
I've been scrolling through some of the forum posts from the blog posts that we put up, and I think we touched on everybody's kind of responses that they do use it for a lot of rapid prototyping. They're using it for kind of that easy data normalization, data cleanup, and everything like that. But most people are looking for those kind of more automated, more shareable, more robust solutions. So I don't think that we really missed anything that anybody kind of threw in as a suggestion. There's differences between Tableau, Power BI, in getting away from that, or getting more into those robust reports versus the static ones. But I think.
What do you guys? I had a question for you guys that I didn't get to. What do you guys think is the best way to sort through all the tables? Because I'll tell you what, I receive like so many things from as tables, and I always take tables to Excel. If someone sends me a table, I don't take it into anything else but Excel. Is there a solution out there that is better that you guys have heard of than taking it into Excel? Something that might be a little easier and to sort of scrape through? Because typically, I get tons of, I hate to say, useless data dumped on me on a regular basis that I then have to put into Excel, format it somehow, maybe make a pivot table, something like that to try to get through it. And it's painful. And then you have to explain to people how to use the pivot table that you just made out all their junk. You know what I mean?
Just click the slicer. Well, what's a slicer?
Yeah. I throw everything into Microsoft Access still. Talk about an antiquated platform. Microsoft Access, you can still buy it, and which is amazing. But yeah, I throw it into there because then you can use SQL to cut it up and do the pivot table equivalent. Which pivot table is very static. An inner join or an aggregate join on a database table is a lot more flexible
Yeah, I usually try to get it into some form of database, but still, to your point, like if you're trying to do something down and dirty, fast and nasty, you dump it in Excel and you start running your filters, and away you go.
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna say, yeah, that's exactly the way that I do it. The Access, the only reason I think I've ever used Access in the last 3 years, 5 years, whatever, is pretty much just for DB Link and Revit. That's it. That's literally the only thing I've ever really used it for.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It is really, yeah. I got into construction because of I was a Microsoft Access programmer.
Really?
Yeah. In college, I had a database consulting business, and one of my clients is a construction company, and they're like, "Hey, we know you have an engineering degree. Why don't you come work here instead of doing that programming stuff?" I'm like, "Okay." But yeah, but it's horrible. It is.
I've got to say, I have one big pro for Excel. So I don't know if you guys, this is a Revit thing. And Joseph, you were saying like everything ends up in Revit for Revit people, for like VDC people. We are like, just push it back in the model. They put out this program, and I usually don't mention programs, but like this Kobe Tools thing.
Yeah.
And I can yank out Excel, and I can format the Excel, and then I can hand it to a PM and say, fill this crap out in Excel. and then I could push it back into my model just by opening it. And that's like the one time where I've been like, okay, this is my favorite Excel thing. Because I went and redid their submittals like Excel. They already had an Excel for submittals. And I'm like, screw it. I'm going to make it so that you can just open it up in Revit and it will put the submittal data on my elements. And like, I did it like at 2 or 3 different places and they didn't even notice because you can hide it from the PMs. Like they like Excel. We already know they like it. So we can kind of use the fact that they like it to corrupt them into filling out a database in Revit, and I felt that was awesome.
Well, I was going to say, is that why they picked Excel? Because they know, because it's just the medium at that point, right? So
right.
Yeah.
It's just the transfer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Revit and Excel actually, believe it or not, go kind of hand in hand with fudging data. Not necessarily the honest way that you should be importing data inside of Revit, but you think about manipulating schedules and all kinds of stuff. Like we go to Excel for everything. Like it's the way we do it. It makes life easier. There are some third-party tools that do it, but again, they leverage a spreadsheet. It's the same thing, whether it's Excel or not. It's still a static spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that Excel is so democratized that everybody knows how to use it is like its own little extra. It's like, I don't need to know that you know how to use computers. You probably can handle Excel. So if I give it to you in Excel, at least you're going to fill it out for me.
Imagine being able to communicate with everybody. Like imagine everybody knew Revit or Bluebeam or whatever the program is, and you didn't have to hold their hands as much as Excel has been, ingrained in everybody. Life would be so much better. Like we wouldn't have, weekly calls training Bob over and over and over again on how to use the same program every week to do the same 3 functions. The only 3 functions he needs for his job in our platform. But
I kind of like we standardized on Bob as being the fall guy.
Yeah.
it probably always is a Bob, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah.
We'll keep it going.
Yeah.
Don't be a Bob, right?
Don't be a Bob.
What do you guys think is it? Like, I took Excel in high school, and I hope they're not still teaching Excel. Because
I hope they are. I hope they are.
No, they definitely are.
They have
they're
to.
definitely. There's
have
a
to.
there's a
Database.
basic computer suite includes the whole Microsoft Office suite.
The difference between a technical degree in college and a non-technical degree is that people know how to use Excel coming out.
I don't know.
Well, they know how to use it well. I mean, if you've
Yeah.
done linear regression for, in Excel, you can probably make a chart.
SPSS for linear regression, man. Don't even bother with Excel. You're going to be banging your head against the wall. Well, actually, just right click, go to the chart. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
We're regressing.
Yeah, sorry.
Regressing, definitely regressing.
What do you guys
But
think
I'm
about the
dumb, too.
coding tools, though? Like teaching, because I know that my kids know some Python, and I'm geeky, but my kids aren't. They know some Python. They know some different languages. Do you think that's going to make it?
I think that
make people more likely to go to scripting.
I think that's probably a good thing. I think what the scripting and stuff does is allows them to kind of conceptualize things, get some abstract thinking, get some critical thinking going on. I don't really want. I have a background in programming, and I've said all along I don't really want to be pigeonholed into one language. Teach me the core concepts. So that's what scripting's good at. For that is teach me the core concepts. Teach me how to think this way. Break down a problem into smaller functions, smaller objects, and that.
Then after that, it's just syntax.
Right.
No, kind of.
Okay.
No.
Oversimplification.
Parts and pieces.
Yeah, no, it
Library,
is
the
way
code works,
more
the
than
platform you're on, yeah.
No, it's way more than that. Because the difference between Python and C++ is light years in a college degree apart.
Well,
usually.
There's like object-oriented languages. There's different factions of languages. Each achieves its
architectures. There's and people
Right,
get
but
very
generally
very good at one little thing.
Okay, I concede.
That generally speaking, though, if I know what it is I want to accomplish, I can go out to Stack Exchange and find somebody to teach me how to do it in whatever language I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I was bringing it up because my interns, I'm working with a couple of interns, and then I have some myself. And when I say, "Do you guys know how to code?" they pretty much all go, "Yeah." And they're interested in construction technology, but almost all of them are like, "Yeah, I can code." And I feel like it's going to become something that's so ubiquitous. It's almost like knowing how to use Excel right. And then you give them tools like Dynamo and some of this graphical programming language. And I'm like, crap, am I now going to have to compete with people using Excel that now can program really freaking fast? Because that's going to suck to be me.
Because I think the future world, if we really want to think about the productivity problem we have in construction, right? People are going to continue to be very, very important to building buildings and going off and doing things. The difference is we're not going to need as many of them. Or we're going to need as many as we have today, but we're going to build a lot more. And that's the effect of better productivity. And to answer your question, Jonathan, so in the one scenario of we don't need as many people, right? If today it takes 10 people and we're cutting it down to 2, those 2 people, I guarantee you will know how to code.
I think if you're going to be if you're going to get into the nerd type of construction and you're not learning coding, you're probably making yourself a dinosaur like me.
Python would be great for everyone in construction.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, we think about construction as being like repeatable stuff, right? Go do drywall in this room, you then go to the next room, rough-in, MEP rough-in, drywall, tape, mud, inspect, that type of thing. And Python is great to kind of get you aligned with that type of logic and that type of required logic.
And it's great for, like you were talking about Dynamo, like Python is like my preferred language for Dynamo. And then also I came from a GIS background originally, and Python is like, that's where we live. So this is, 7-8 years ago, it was Python heavy. Now I think it's almost a requirement to be in there.
It is.
I'll send you some free links to tutorials, Jonathan, man.
I'm learning. Like I can hang, just barely I can hang. But
to your point, Jonathan, we've got an intern this summer who's going into construction. He's taking construction management with a business minor and stuff. And I think he's had 1 or 2 computer science classes, and we brought him in specifically to tackle some Power BI stuff. And he's not a coder. He knows some basic scripting and stuff like that, but that was enough to get him into the DAX language and start to like I said to Brett, like to start asking the right questions when he's searching forums and stuff to kind of figure out how to do what he wants to do. It's a mindset, and not so much, again, like I think like Joey was saying, it's not so much the specific syntax or the language and stuff. It's the mindset that you got to wrap around. How do I solve this particular problem?
So
and once I know,
knowing what to Google.
Yes.
How big of a company do you think you have to be before you get a dedicated Power BI programmer?
I don't know. I would say,
because it's very, picking up an intern and going, hey, we're going to give him a bunch of Coca-Cola and Mentos, and we're going to lock him in a room and make sure he shows up. And by the end of the summer, he's going to figure out Power BI for a particular thing. Much different is the step above that is, hey, we're going to go hire a consultant and pay real money to go do it. And then after that, once you've paid that money, you're going to go, hey, we should go hire somebody to do it full time,
right.
or half time, right? But how big of a company do you have to be before you go do that?
I don't know what the right number is. I'm a big proponent of even the smallest companies. I think could benefit from having a entry level programmer, an entry level Power BI person. You're probably not talking data scientist at the $25 to $50 million a year contractor, but once you start getting around $100 million, like it feels like that's probably about a right number. Like you should maybe have an IT, an IS staff, not an IT staff, but an IS staff.
I've got firms with $2 billion a year in revenue that are crushing it, that don't have anybody on staff that could probably spell Power BI. It's crazy. It's mind blowing, but give it time. I do think it'll get there. It's like the AutoCAD to Revit transition, right? It's kind of along those same lines. That's what I put in my post, by the way, was the AutoCAD.
Oh, that's right.
Revit,
that's
right. I think the devil's advocate to Brett and Travis, what you guys were talking about, and Travis is saying, he's talking about when you get to a certain volume level that you think it's a requirement to have someone like that on board. But I would say even maybe the smaller, like the lower overhead, those are the guys that have to be more efficient, right? I mean, you don't have the office power to put 3 or 4 guys on a project and you may have one guy managing like the big job you have or something. And then at that point, like, you better figure out efficiency, or you better figure out how to do something quickly. So I don't know. I don't know if size is the like the justifying metric there. So I don't know.
Because you could be really specialized and do one thing really, really well, kind of very broadly, and get to $2 billion. But, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like the, in the general contracting world, you know, you have two companies. One does $200 million and the other does $200 million. Company A only does ground up construction. Company B does nothing but commercial TI. You know, it's like they're totally different companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, in the ground up construction, you have a very long project cycle and you have big clumpy things of work. In the commercial TI work, you know, if you have a preferred client, you never turn down work. You know, you get a $100,000 contract or a, you know, $10 million contract, and you go and do it. So I think it really depends on I think you're right. It depends on the company, and maybe it was a little bit of a maybe the question should be rethought a little bit, but.
Yeah, maybe it should be more geared towards what are they doing today that we can improve upon with Power BI, because that $2 billion customer that I'm telling you about does commercial. They do large data centers. They do all kinds of crazy stuff that is non-repeatable work, very specialized, or not very specialized, rather, is what I'm trying to say. They're kind of all over the board. They are a GC, but no Power BI to be in sight. Very little Bluebeam, very little, you know, all the stuff that we would think of doing, but it's just trying to figure out where the customer is at today and what Power BI can give them, and if we can improve on it, because maybe they're already standardized on data platforms, but it's just not Power BI. Maybe it is all in Excel. They're aggregating stuff behind the scenes, stuff I don't know about, right? I don't know what they're doing, but maybe they're very efficient at that, and Power BI is just, yeah, it'd be great. It's just another layer that they're not involved with.
I've run into a lot of times with like the beer companies where you.
Uh-oh.
I heard him talking, but his mouth wasn't moving.
The old-fashioned cut up to his data connector.
Okay, no, I think I'm almost back. I think I capped my data. I'm on a cell phone, so I think I'm probably dead. So bye, guys.
Well, that's a perfect way to kind of put a nail in this one, I think, right, Trent?
I think so. So we're over an hour, and, you know, in typical Dork fashion, we could probably do this for another hour. We came in with no real agenda, and we just had a vague topic to talk to brush on, and you guys have made my job really easy. So I thank you for that. But once again, Brett Young, Joseph Whitney, thanks, guys. It's been a fun discussion, and we'll probably look forward to the next one. So
yeah, we really appreciate you guys just jumping in.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, see you.
See you.